Hi, this is Praios and I'm a professional gambler, and today we will discuss how to analyze poker hands and to do it like a pro. Want to spot the flaws you. This video I found and it's from BluffTheSpot. We will go through it. We'll see what their pro recommends. Analyze your hands properly. And then I will also give my thoughts. I guess this will be No Limit Hold'em based. So yeah, you will probably talk about PLO Solver or some other program. If you want to do the same for Pot Limit Omaha, I highly suggest to use either PLO Vision or the PLO Trainer. Both are equally good, and yeah, you can find the links in the description below. I will earn a small commission when you sign through my link. But yeah, this is definitely a great program, and I work with it with one of these all the time in order to find flaws in my game and high spot. So without further ado, let's now jump into the video.
Hey guys, Simon here, and today we're going to be talking about how to review your hands properly. We're going to be having a look at when to do it, what hands to select, and how you can go about analyzing your own hands to get a bit of a better idea about whether you're making the right plays or whether you're making mistakes. Before we do this though, I want to let you guys know that we're still giving away Jimmy DeRaid's tips for how to crush pre-flop. Go check it out in the link below. It's going to really help your 3-betting game. I recommend it a ton.
We had to increase voice a bit.
With that out of the way, let's talk about the
Recording
topic
is-
for today. And the topic is how to analyze your hands properly, because it's a really important skill that you need to be able to learn how to do yourself, because we're not always
Test. Okay, my mic is working as well. I thought it might not.
going to have access to coaches or other people to help us, even though these resources are very valuable. Now, the first thing I'm going to say about reviewing hands is it's important to do it at the right time. And what I mean by this is if you have a big losing session or even like a big winning session, you might be on some kind of losing tilt or winner's tilt, and you're not going to be you're going to be tired, you've used up your mental energy, and you're not going to be in the right frame of mind to be able to properly analyze and review the hands that you've just played. So what I recommend you do is, at least take like a half an hour break and then come back and review the session.
Yeah, you should definitely. I partly agree. So you definitely should only. You should review your sessions when you are in a fresh state of mind and when you are ready to work and ready to do hard analysis, when you are being sharp-minded. But the same is also true for poker. If you are tilted on a downswing and stuff, you should probably play less or make sure that you are in the right state of mind before getting into a game, because otherwise this is not a winning proposition anymore.
I often find that works best for me. I like to, have a bit of take the dog for a walk, have a bit of a breather, and then come back and review my hands. And I normally find that, that little, gap from away from the computer, refresh, and I can, I like to analyze the hands the same day that I've played them.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy schedule to have. When you play in a certain time, and then after the session is finished, for example, take screenshots while in the session or mark them in Holdem Manager. You can also do that and later return to the marked hands. By the way, Holdem Manager is another great program you should definitely buy. It's relatively cheap and it gives you so much information about your opponents. I will also have it linked below. And yeah, you get stats like VPIP, 3-bet percentages, and a lot more stats, which you will not be able to figure out on your own. And this will be very detailed and becoming more and more detailed, especially if you play a lot against these opponents. Yeah, it will help you to make better decisions, and you will get your money back in no time. As these stats will be way more detailed and accurate than you can get at the table yourself.
For some people, this doesn't work, however. They can't do it. Once the poker's done for the day, they're done. And what helps them best is to, then review it the next day. So, maybe before your next session, you go have a look over a couple of your biggest pots or a couple of spots that you found tricky and then use it as a bit of a warm-up. When you
I also had a student who was marking hands all the time, but he had a backlog and it got bigger and bigger and bigger because he was basically only playing and never reviewing his hands. And he can never learn from his mistakes and stuff. So yeah, definitely down to that. You will need less studying the more advanced you get, because a lot of sports will be familiar and you already know what to do. Especially in the beginning, studying should be a big part of your poker daily routine. And once you get familiar with most of the sports, you can do less.
Fresh, and this is also a really good time to review your hands, but it's important you don't do it just as soon as you finish the session. Have a bit of a break, step away, and then come back to it fresh so that you can really have like, a bit of a proper outlook on it. Like particularly like, if it's a tough pot and you lost a lot of money, it's going to hurt. You might need to sleep on it, because otherwise you're going to be like, you're not going to be able to look at things in like a fresh light. Alrighty, so you've had a bit of a break, you come back to review your hands. Now, it's important to...
I think it's also very important to not just use solvers, because solvers assume that a guy who's playing GTO faces another guy who is playing GTO. This is often not the case, especially in soft games or against huge fish, when you have to make your own ranges and stuff and not just use custom-made hands. The customized stuff you get from these programs, because these are just not accurate. Someone is opening like 80% of hands. You obviously can 3-bet more compared to a guy who's being tied.
Like, select the right hands to review. What I often find when I have coachings with students and they're bringing hands to me to discuss is it's often the big pots that they've lost. Like, quite...
Yeah, that's definitely a mistake to only like being... This is also a mindset issue, I think. You just want to review the hands where you lost the most, because that are not necessarily the hands where you can learn the most from. When I'm unsure about something, I mean, it doesn't matter how big the pot is. I always make a screenshot and find out later. For example, should I open this pre-flop? So it's just a simple open. Maybe it's a tiny difference what to do. But yeah, I take a screenshot and mark it for later review. Or when I have a flop where I don't know, okay, what bet sizing is ideal here? Or should I bet here? What percentage should I check? Often it's also not interesting what to do with my hand, because I know what to do. But at the table, I might wonder, okay, what if I had not this hand, but another one? And then, this is also something where you can learn a lot. And you don't only review this board with the hand you currently have, but also think about other hands you might have that are more marginal and that are worth analyzing. Or you could also put yourself in the shoes of your opponent and think that he should have been done better. For example, if he could totally misplayed his hands in your opinion, you can think about a better way to play it. So it's not so you could not only learn from your hands, but also from the hand of other guys. And you see their mistakes, and but you also are not quite sure how he best should play it, and then you could later analyze it and find out.
Often I do like, hey guys, bring some like hands for bluff catching. Like I want to see some tough spots. And often what happens is like I just get more big pots that are coolers. It's like I had top 2 pair and he had bottom set. And whilst these hands suck and they hurt,
and the coolers are not worth analyzing. It's just money's getting in anyways. And yeah, it happens for you and your opponent, so you should be even in these pots. The marginal ones are the ones where the difference is made. So if you make better decisions on average than your opponent, you will make more money.
But these aren't the hands that we want to review. These hands, like, don't make a ton of sense to review. And, quite often it's actually the small pots that are really, really important to review. They're the most frequent, they happen the most often, and it's actually where most of our win rate comes from. Obviously, like, the big pots matter heaps too. If we're making big mistakes in 200 big blind pots, that's obviously going to hurt our win rate. But it's important that we look at all kinds of hands. So I don't recommend just sorting from, like, biggest pots, losing all the way down. I also don't recommend just, looking at your like biggest winning pots. It's important to have like,
Yeah, what I also found is, especially when you don't get any further with your GTO approach. For example, you play very aggressive, loose, fishy opponent where you cannot use the ranges predefined GTO. Then people often just give up or look at the GTO solution and they do this or adjust in a way that they are getting a bit looser, for example. But that's not enough. You should then do a separate analysis for this. And most people don't know today anymore how to do it. Because they never learned, and it's so easy and convenient to learn nowadays with the solvers, but they only help you to play perfect against good opponents, but it's not that well suited against all these fish.
A bit of a think about your session. Think about which spots you struggled with, which spots you found tough, and have a think about that. So we pick some interesting hands to review, stuff that's actually going to help you improve in your games. All right, so we're reviewing.
What I also think is you should not only pick hands and review this, but you could also ask yourself, okay, what do I do with this sort of draw? Or what do I do with in PLO double paired hands? And what's the difference between single and double suited? What difference connectivity makes? So all these things you can also analyze and learn a lot. And often don't even need to go in complete detail in a spot, but you look at groups of hands that are similar, and then you learn way more, because this is not just for a single spot, but you can generalize. And now, okay, with this sort of double pair, I have to do this, and with the double suited, very good connected ones, I play this way, and so on and so forth.
Things fresh, and we've picked out some interesting hands for ourselves to review. Now, how do we actually go about doing it? Well, I'm going to bring up a hand here that I played earlier today, and we're going to have a bit of a look at it and have a bit of a breakdown, and I'm going to discuss my thought process for how I go about analyzing my own play. All right, so this is a bit of an interesting one that I've got from earlier today, and it's going to be a 3-bet pot, small blind versus button, and I'm going to have a bit of a discussion about how I go about analyzing my hand. So the first thing is it folds around to the button. He opens to $5, 2.5x, very standard, and I'm in the small blind with King 10 suited. My standard raise size here is $23. This is obviously a hand that we're always 3-betting. Not everything really to go off the book here. But however, it might be worth noting that you weren't sure around your pre-flop play. So what I often recommend doing, have a look at some charts. There's tons of free pre-flop charts out there. We've got the pre-flop Bible as well as a resource. There's tons of stuff to check, and I recommend you guys mostly stick to the charts.
I don't think that this is correct. And we also don't have charts for because way more hands than a no limit hold'em. And you have to just have to train, but it's very simple and easy to train with the solvers. Very often you can, for example, pick a spot like button versus small blind or something, and then just play a lot of hands and try to make the best decisions possible. And if you only get it 50% right, you obviously need to improve a lot. But if you get to 90-95% right, then this is very good. But again, don't always stick to these results, as you might play people who are off the books. So if someone opens UTG, you normally are supposed to be very tight against them. But if you're playing someone who is opening 80% from UTG, then obviously you have a way wider range playing against him. So keep that in mind. Make appropriate adjustments and don't just stick to what you have learned from the trainer or from charts or from whatever.
For your pre-flop play. Maybe if, I had a read, the button was a weaker player, we might look to open a little bit wider than the charts. But for most situations, you want to be opening pretty close to what's suggested by a Monka Sim.
Yeah, so he's also guy who is also just going with the solver results and then making little adjustments based on the playing style of your opponent. And I think if you got good reads and if your opponent is very crazy, you sometimes have to not just be dividing a bit, but a lot.
In this scenario, this is like totally standard. The size is totally normal. I don't need to go check this. But if you're less comfortable with this stuff, there are resources out there to help you confirm whether your pre-flop play was correct. The one thing I will say is there are going to be pre-flop decisions that you can't just look at a chart for. There's going to be stuff where there's a 3-bet and a call behind, really funky stuff going on. And in those situations, you're going to have to use a bit of logic, and you might have to ask a friend, hey, what's going on in this spot? This isn't a...
Logic, using your brain always helps. So often you can get behind stuff with common sense, but common sense also only gets you that far. And my experience often is with asking friends, it does not help at all. Because when you don't know what to do in this spot, there's a good chance that your friend also does not know. Yeah, my experience is better work it out for yourself and don't rely on others. Also, like, study groups never worked for me because often there's like one guy doing all the work and the other guys are just, it's like a free rider problem. One guy just does all the work and the others just learn and from the guy who's doing all the work. And usually it's will not be able to make it in a way that all people participate in the same amount and stuff. And also study groups and stuff are not that necessary anymore nowadays, as we got solvers, and studying is way easier and you don't need that much math and put in correct ranges and stuff as you got the solver, and this is already pre-built for you. So this actually I think is bad for poker, as people like myself who are very good in analyzing stuff even without solvers are now not having big advantage anymore against all other players, because we can just use solvers and learn way more easy, and without even needing a coach. We just need to get in the time and put in the work. I mean, you don't even need to be the smartest guy ever. You just need to put in the work. And very important also the psychological skills. So to not tilt. This is like, if you can be the best player in the world, but if you cannot keep your emotions under control, get on tilt and do some stupid ass bullshit, then you will not succeed.
Standard 100 big blind spot. The guy opened to 5x under the gun. What do I do? And this is going to require a little bit of outside the box thinking. It's not going to be as simple as reference.
Yeah, it's also like with limpers. Solvers don't limp. And then it's always, you also have to make your adjustments.
In a chart, cool my hands in there as a raise, easy, let's go. It might require a bit of what do I expect to play well against a player with this range? Anyway, I think pre-flop's one of the easiest streets here, and we, face the call, and we get this flop of Queen 7-5 flush draw. And this is a spot that I wasn't quite sure of in game. I've had quite a big look at 3-betting, small blind and big blind versus button, and I wasn't sure exactly what strategy to play.
You can also, I think now you can do two types of strategies. First one would be the GTO path. Now, what frequencies are required here with your hand, and then act accordingly. But you could also, if you have Holdem Manager, for example, or Pokertracker is the other program. I mean, it's the same company, but still different programs that track the stats of your opponent. And if you, for example, see, okay, this guy is folding in position 60% against continuation bets, then you are probably good to go to always c-bet against this guy, because you will auto make money, because he has a big leak in his game. He's not having the minimum defense frequency he needs to have in order to be not exploitable. But if it's a good opponent, or if you don't have stats on him yet, then stick to GTO.
Now, In game, I decided that the single Broadway and the two kind of lowish connected cards were okay to just to see bet range. I decided it couldn't be too bad.
I mean, I think continuation betting, according to GTO, might suck here because you don't have much at all. Not even a backdoor flush draw. I mean, there's a backdoor straight draw, but that's about it.
I could just use a small sizing, and I figured I could probably just get away with it. It's probably a little bit of a mistake, but I don't think I'm going to lose more than like 1% EV. And I decided to go with this small bet.
Yeah, I also think that's not a big mistake. Whatever he does
in game, and I think we see here, yeah, it's roughly like 33%. Now, is this a good play to make? And the reason I made this play in game is because it was single Broadway and two low cards, and I kind of like categorize boards into like different categories, and based on those categories, I apply a different c-betting strategy. Now, one way to check this is to have a look at a sim. Like, how would what would be our actual strategy on this board? And so I find using sims in spots you're unsure, particularly around stuff like flop and turn, where you're going to have relatively close to solver strategies. Running the sim itself is going to be super, super handy. So let's have a look at a sim and see how this compares. All right, so I've run a couple of sims here. I've run two sims, and the first one we're looking at this spot, it's small blind versus button, 100 big blinds, and I've used two sizes on the flop. I've used like the 33, and I've used a big sizing as well. And we can see here there's almost no checking going on, very high frequency betting at 33%, and a little bit of big betting too. I don't play multiple size strategies, I just play a single size strategy, and I think in this spot I'm going to use one that's the higher.
I think it's smart to just one bet sizing because it's very hard to stay balanced when you have like 5 different bet sizings for the flop, and your opponents might figure out what you are doing. For example, smaller bet is weaker more often or something like that. So yeah, that's often you can simplify game tree by not losing too much EV and also making it more easy for you to learn stuff. So yeah, that's definitely a smart approach.
Frequency, and obviously if I use the big sizing I'm going to have to mix, but I think if I use the small sizing I'm going to be allowed to range bet. And I can check this right here. So I ran the same sim, but I forced it to range bet. And we see here that the EV is 116.81. And if we check the mix, it's 117.9. So we lose one chip by range betting, but in a pot of 225 chips, it's less than half a percent. So I would say this is a totally reasonable strategic adjustment to make. I wasn't sure whether I was actually able to range bet this in game, just because it is flush draw. The 7 and the 5 are kind of connected, but the single Broadway kind of boards, we are able to range bet in these positions, and I think this this holds up with my.
Yeah, that for example is a good information to have when you know, okay, no limit hold'em. This is a good board where you can range bet. So yeah, this is information way more worth way more than analyzing this particular spot. Just yeah, go beyond just the spot and yeah, get a better view of the greater picture. So yeah, if you get a flop that is not the same, but like two low cards and a big one, you next time now, oh, hey, probably can see with my whole range.
Strategy, and I think we made the right decision in game. So back to the hand in question, and so I'm pretty happy with the decision making on the flop. I think range betting this is totally fine, and we face a call. And we get this 10 of hearts on the turn. Now, this is actually kind of an interesting spot.
I don't know much about no limit hold'em, but I probably would check. Often check call, but let's see what the real no limit hold'em pro does.
Since we picked the small c-bet on the flop, I don't think we can actually have a jamming range on the turn. Maybe we can. We have, what is it, 1.5, no, it's almost 2x. Yeah, it's a bit over 2x to go. So maybe we do have some jams here. I wouldn't be surprised if the solver jams some stuff, maybe like kings, maybe even some stuff like ace queen, and some combo draws or flush draws. But again, I think I'm not going to play that strategy. I think if I was to have a betting range, and I don't think king 10 would get in it, I think I'd play something like 3/4 or check. I think that's kind of what I would go for. I'm not sure how good that would be. Maybe we want to pot control and go smaller out of position because of all the draws present. Maybe we just want to go enormous and we want to rip it in. But I think my strategy would be 3/4 and check.
I think his strategy sounds reasonable.
And I think, where the bottom of our value range is going to be like, queen, jack, maybe queen, nine. And I think what we're going to use for bluffs here is going to be very equity based. I think we're going to have like things like, backdoor flush draws like hearts, open-ended straight draws, maybe some stuff like some gut shots, like some ace jack, ace king kind of business, particularly with like a club or a heart. And, I'm kind of thinking about how my strategy as a whole. How does my strategy play when I'm reviewing a hand? And so we can have a look at this in the sim. So I think all our pairs except
Oh, very interesting. Let's see what the sim thinks.
like the queen X and over pairs are going to bet.
I think he might also be biased because I think he did the sims in advance and already know the result. This might change the things what he's telling us now. But yeah, whatever. Still.
We have some slow plays with some sets, and I like to kind of compare this to what's going on in a sim. Not only does it make sense to me logically in terms of having some bluffs and having some value and thinking of what those are going to be, but also we do have these resources here where we can kind of check out some solutions. And so this is the turn. You can see there's a tiny bit of jamming, but it's mostly going 3/4 or it is blocking. Now, if you guys wanted to play multiple size strategies, you probably want to use the small one, use the big one, but I'm not a big advocate for multiple size strategies. I'm only going to use the big bet here. So when I'm reviewing my hand, it's important that the sim that I create matches the strategy that I'm playing. This sim actually doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
And the thing also is, it's harder to create your own sims and I think almost nobody does. That's also a problem because don't have many turn sims and the products available have no or very small rivers. And that's why nobody trains for the river, but at least nobody I talk to. And people are just like, okay, there's no river sim, so I use common sense instead. So that's definitely not good. And if you go in there and make the sims on your own, you will be making way better decisions than all the other guys just using common sense.
Because I don't play this strategy, and that's okay. I'm not trying to play this strategy. So what I'd do, create a quick subtree, and then all I'm going to do is go 75, build tree, okay, go, and I'm going to rebuild my tree for the strategy that I'm going to use.
That's actually smart if you have that strategy. It's not that easy in PLO to build a tree. Often takes a lot of time, and it's way more computation intensive. And you also need to buy other stuff as well, like PLO Solver, or also got another program in there where you can do that. So check this out as well. I think it's called Simple PLO. But I'm also sort of in the lazy camp, as I did it beginning but stopped doing it. This is also because I cannot play, or most sites don't allow me to play anymore because they made money in their casinos and they banned me from all activity. So I don't understand why I'm not allowed to play poker on PokerStars, for example, but that's the way it goes. And so it's also, there's not a big point for me to learn this stuff, as I am not playing anymore. I'm just doing it for you guys, making some interesting videos
after I see that it's okay. Now, let's say I saw that the 75% wasn't used at all, it was only the small bet. I'd take that as a bit of a learning note. I'd go, okay, on these particular types of boards, maybe this is going on. Maybe I need to readjust what size I'm barreling for. I'd still have a look at it through the lens of the strategy that I played, because that's also fine if you sometimes you are going to pick the wrong sizing, and it's important that you still play the wrong sizing correctly. It's a bit weird. But in this case,
I also hope that you can hear this guy, because it feels like I'm speaking way louder, and this is just recorded very, very low volume, and I already have everything turned at maximum, but it's still kind of, maybe my ears get better with age, but I can barely hear this guy.
I think like the 75 is fine. We'll run it just for the 75. And we see here, and this is kind of like, this is what my strategy would be in game. It'd be big bet or check. Now, let's have a look at what's going on. So I kind of thought like Queen Jack was the bottom of my value range, and I think that I'm going to be using a lot of...
Yeah, looked like his intuition was very good, and mine too, because I said it before. Did the analysis, and King 10 makes up good check, or it's at least checking most of the time, judging from the red and green marks on the King 10.
High equity bluffs or gut shots and overpair, like Ace Jack, Ace King with a club as my bluffs. Now we can see here the overpairs do like to bet. Ace Queen, King Queen, Queen Jack really likes to bet, and we can see that's about the bottom of the value range. Queen 9 here, not a really big fan of betting, and so I was a little bit off with the bottom of my value range, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, a couple of things that I might have missed with a couple of these like Ace 10 kind of hands, King 10 kind of hands. In game, I didn't want to bet King 10 at all. I didn't think that was a hand that I actually ever wanted to bet. Now, surprisingly here, we do get to do some betting with 10x. It's kind of interesting. I think it's just forcing equity. I think that we're ahead of a lot of things like pocket 8s, pocket 9s, 7x, 5x, and we're still ahead of all the draws. So we are charging draws as well, and there are an abundance of draws that still have to call us. So this is something that I don't know if I necessarily miss.
I would also be, for example, what do I do if I bet and get raised? Do we call it off? This would be also very interesting. I mean, this probably didn't happen in the hand. I mean, it cannot have happened. He checked. But this would also be something I would explore when I'm analyzing this hand, because this would be a very interesting spot.
Played, but I certainly wasn't finding this in game. This wasn't something that I RNG'd my check with King 10. I just decided I wasn't going to bet King 10. Now, would I try to implement this in game? I'm not sure. I'd have to say this, this is a thing that does happen when you turn second pair, you barrel it a little bit. But I don't think it's going to be a massive mistake not to find this myself. Obviously, checking is a totally fine option. The solver checks a ton. But, it is something to work, something to note that I wasn't finding this myself. And so this is something that I can think about when I'm in this spot again. Maybe I do end up finding a bit of the barreling, in a similar kind of spot. We then have a look at our bluffs, and you can see things like, the open-enders are bluffing. Obviously, like Ace Jack, like clubs and hearts is going for it. We can see here, lots of flush draws like to barrel, and you can see, a bunch of stuff like, Ace King loves barreling. It doesn't perform very well when they check, when I check and he stabs at it, because I don't have enough equity to check raise all in. So it's mostly barreling, and I probably would play my Ace Kings a little bit too passively in this spot, to be honest. I'd be looking for the heart or the club, and, as I can see, it actually doesn't matter. It just likes to barrel them all. So that's something, I probably need to, improve on in game. But overall, I think, this makes a lot of sense. I think we played this, relatively well. Obviously, checking King 10 was fine. But here comes the interesting straight, and this is probably the toughest part for the things to review.
Okay, the interesting part is coming now.
Because for the flop and the turn, particularly if this is, this is a zone hand against an unknown regular, I'm going to just try to, copy the solver as much as possible. But when we get to the river, things start to get a little bit weird. Because all of a sudden, I don't think the solver actually is going to tell us the most, accurate way to play the hand. Because the solver is going to do, everything's going to be a beat.
So it was check on the turn, if I read that right. That's very interesting. Checked back. What would common sense tell me to do here? I mean, on the one hand, our hand is a great bluff catcher, but our opponent did not bluff on the turn. So I would discount draws a bit, but he can obviously take a free card with a draw. He might have something that he wants to show down, but might call a bet. So I think it's, I mean, just the exploitative approach is, it's more likely that he has some sort of 5 or 7, which he might pair us off with, but that is not betting himself. So betting actually might be a decent plan.
zero EV in terms of bluff catching. And, you know, value thresholds get weird because it's tough to tell, but you can still use the solver as a bit of a guide at how the spot operates at a baseline. Okay. Now in this spot here, I decided I wanted to have two strategies, and I like to play two strategies on the river in this spot. One of these is a small bet. I like to really have a block bet part of my range. And the other one is actually a jam, and I want to play like small bet or jam. I think 3 sizes would be good here as well. I think small bet, large bet, jam would also work. I think that would be a perfectly fine strategy. But I think in this spot,
and the 3 bet sizing strategy sounds best to me, but yeah, it's hard to apply. Also going away from his original strategy. But maybe it's fine for the river to have more bet sizes. This is also the street where you make the most money. Mike makes sense. I think my strategy would be have like 1 bet sizing, again, only simplify things, and this bet sizing would be like 3/4 or something.
what we're gonna have is we're gonna have some, like, you know, weak Queen X, bunch of 10x like Ace 10, King 10, Jack 10 that wants to value bet, even some stuff like pocket jacks that definitely want to value bet. And then we're gonna have some traps. I think we're gonna have some sets that maybe want to jam, maybe like, you know, some hands like a 5-4, maybe some, you know, like, you know, we've 3-bet 5-4 and now we've like river this hand and we want to get maximum value. Maybe we had like pocket 10s that we were trying to check raise on the turn. So I think we're gonna have a couple hands that we're gonna want to jam as well. And I think for this hand, I think I prefer the small block sizing. I think, like, you know, the block is going to be based around like 10x and jacks. And then I think we're going to be able to jam hands like as weak as probably Ace Queen. I think Ace Queen, if we had here and we were going for the turn check raise, I think it'd be a great hand to jam here. I think, like, you know, particularly after they check back on the turn.
Well, this approach so far sounds a bit exploitable if he's like small betting only the 10x type of hands, and his opponent can put him in sort of a tough spot if he jams.
What do they improve to? Like, I think 5-4 improves, pocket 4s maybe improves, and that's really it. Like, Ace Queen is basically the nuts in this spot. So that's kind of how I'd construct my, like, you know, my river kind of strategy. And if we have a look here, it goes check, check, and what do we get? We get the 4 of diamonds, so we'll plug that one in. And you can see here, I'm kind of a little bit off with my strategy. I hadn't looked at this beforehand. And we can see here the solver doesn't actually like the jam at all. It thinks the jam is, like, you know, there's too much money. We don't have enough strong hands.
Yeah, I also didn't like the jam, just to say.
That want to jam. And those that do, like something maybe like queens, isn't actually, you know, it blocks too much of the calls. So what we can see is the 2 sizes that the solver actually wants to use is the 1/3 sizing and the 3/4 sizing. And so this is something that I have to probably realize in game is when we check
3/4. That's what I said. Maybe I'm still a no limit hold'em specialist.
check the turn in a spot like this. We actually don't have enough strong hands that we want to jam. And this is something, okay, maybe I'm getting my sizes wrong. I typically want to have like a small bet and an overbet. But maybe, you know, in spots like this particularly,
I think this is not a spot for small and overbet. This sounds stupid to me. I think it's perfectly fine to have like 1 bet size there because, yeah, you have a small bet size. It's hard to construct your range in a way that you have anything that feels comfortable calling the jam. I mean, what hands are you calling the jam with? What hands are you folding? I mean, this, yeah, 3/4. Make your life as easy as possible.
when I'm a little bit capped myself, I need to have just a small bet and a big bet, and it's okay not to get the chips in all the time. Now, the other question I want to ask is are my value thresholds okay? And we can see here, King 10 can actually even go for the big size. Like, King 10's good enough for a 3/4 size bet. I actually thought in game that King 10
That's what I said.
Block, and I actually thought it was close to block. I was like, oh, I'm not sure. But we can see hands actually as weak as something like, 10-8 still able to value bet. Is there anything worse? No, 7-6 is too weak. 8-7. Yeah, so we're basically, the bottom of the value range is about 10-8. So basically, all your 10-8, 10x can, go for at least a small bet. And some of it can even go for a big bet too, which I'm actually quite surprised at. I don't think I'm ever finding that. Even jacks, which I thought would be a block, is actually going to be a 3/4 bet. And I think part of this is like, in game, the button is going to like, take a stab with a lot of his queen X. So jacks and 10x are actually really, really strong here, which is actually worth noting. I think that, I could probably play this. We're even like able to value bet something like pocket nines, which seems crazy to me. But this is all the kind of things that we're taking in mind. So I think the small bet is okay. And now the interesting part of the hand...
Yeah, betting pocket nines sounds crazy to me too. I probably would not have bet.
...comes when I small bet, and I get raised. And I get raised a very small amount.
That's what I was talking about. I mean, it would be even crazier when he raised all in. I mean, I think he has to call it off, but... yeah. I think the bigger bet is just way better. And this screams value to me. But yeah, I think we cannot make the very exploitable fold here. That this looks either to me like a queen 8 or queen 9 or some weak hand, but now realized that it has him beat. Maybe a top parish-like hand. Maybe he also made like 5-4, like 2-pair, or the straight on the river, which does not want him to fold, but definitely extract value. Let's see what he decides. But yeah, I rarely see this as a bluff, so, but I would not fold against an unknown. I would call and make a note.
And so...
and yeah, sometimes you still see some stupid shit that you never expected.
And this is a spot where I think all three decisions could make a bit of sense. Maybe, I think this hand makes a lot of sense as a bluff catcher. I think having the 10...
He could also be overvaluing some stuff, like he has like 10 jack. Might now think that it's time for a tiny value raise. Or maybe he is like, okay, my draw bricked, but I don't think my opponent is strong as well, and I want to give myself a good price on the bluff. I mean, you don't know how your opponent thinks. Just call. You get getting good pot odds. Your hand's definitely strong enough. You don't need to be good that often.
He's really good. I think the hands he's meant to be raising is going to be stuff maybe like ace 10. For this sizing, like ace 10, king 10 himself, where he's like, I actually think this is maybe good enough to raise. And also maybe some queen X. He's might have some queen jack, king queen, but I don't think he has a lot of this once the turn goes check check. So his value range is probably based around 10x, and it's probably pretty narrow. The fact that we have a 10 ourselves, and the fact that we get really, really nice odds to call, meant that I wanted to call. But there's also other options here. Maybe we want to turn this into a bluff. Maybe we decide, he's only ever doing this with a queen, having the 10 block some of the strongest hands he might have, like pocket 10s, queen 10. Maybe this is actually better to turn into a bluff. And this is where solvers get tricky, because it's not easy, because no one's going to play this spot like a solver would. When I have a look at the spot...
Interesting. He even thinks about turning his hand into a bluff. But yeah, I think I would just call. But yeah, I mean, that's actually an option too.
Here, and I put in the small bet, and, no one plays this small raise. This raise isn't, the solver doesn't really use this small raise. And so having a look at what we do here isn't super helpful.
I also think that the small raise is very shitty. It's just an exploitative thing to do, maybe to extract a little bit of value, or if you know your opponent will overfold or something.
I mean, we can see here that king 10 completely mixes. This isn't a strategy that, you can look at a solver and go, cool, I made the right decision. I call 95% of the time. Well, I only call king 10 with spades, and I don't...
But as you can see, king 10 is never turning himself into the bluff. It's either calling or folding, and it's even folding more than calling. I think that is probably also against bigger raise sizes, so... click call. I would click call.
Call it with clubs. I can actually re-jam ace 10. It's really, really...
His hand also looks sort of very weak, as when he bets small, flop, checks turn, and then bets small again on the river when every draw bricked.
Really tricky to tell. And so what I recommend you guys do is think about through this spot logically. Does his line make sense? Do I think that he's going to find, enough bluffs here? What is he meant to be doing this with value? And
it's hard to tell as we don't have any reads on him as well.
it doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, it looks here like it's focused around like weak 9x and maybe like jacks. So that kind of like not quite, ace 10 as well. So that's kind of the value region. So when we have a 10 ourselves, I think it's a really, really nice card to have. We get a really nice price to call. And I think it makes, his line doesn't make a ton of sense because I don't think he's going to have a lot of spot in this stuff that he actually, is going to play like this. And so I think that we have a profitable call. And this is where solvers kind of have to take a back seat. And on the river, we really have to use a bit of logic and intuition about whether his line makes sense. And particularly when we're bluff catching.
Yeah, I also think always have to keep in mind that even the best players are way off GTO. So yeah, using your brain and logic often is better than just blindly going the GTO approach.
Do we think it's over bluffed or under bluffed? Now, at the end of this process, you guys might still be confused. You might still be sitting there going, well, I don't know what to do. I've gone through, I thought about it logically. I think I made an okay play, but you're still unsure. Now, this is where I recommend get some outside help. Go to a forum, post your hand, put your thought process.
I think forums don't work more. And everyone is like, everything secret and don't make my potential opponents better. So the forums are dead and I'm not posting there anymore. At least that's true for the ones I used 2+2 in Poker Strategy. It could be the case that if you have like a subscription to one of these video sites, I mean, the two solvers I presented to you in the beginning also have coaching sites with them who also have this product in addition. I think they also have forums, and there it might be valuable to post hands because people might actually still helping each other. But yeah, I never tried. I don't know. By the way, if you want to, if you learn a lot from watching other pros and one very good pros playing, I also got links for raise one. How is it called? Raise once? Run and tries. Run and tries? I think it's the name. Run and tries and the PLO Mastermind. The description, but enough of the advertising. I hope he shows what his opponent had because I'm very curious about it.
List it logically and the steps.
Maybe he's folding.
You thought you were doing, what you thought your range was doing, and then get a bit of feedback. Maybe you have a poker friend you can ask. Message someone on Skype. Go, hey, I had this hand, thought it was interesting, wasn't sure exactly what was going on. What do you think about it yourself? But it's important that you do this after doing the work yourself. It's no good.
Yeah, because, I mean, sort of important because you might be biased if you hear other opinions first. And I think it's also important to not get biased because of the result. Because if he now shows you the nuts and you call, it does not necessarily mean that you made a bad decision. Maybe you just ran into the top of his range. So don't be results orientated. That's also a very big tip. So might have played someone heads up and got destroyed, but you might still have the edge, but just ran very unlucky. So don't look at the results, but look how the game went, if you played well, and if you think you have an edge, and the results shouldn't matter. And in the long term, if you can play more often the game, you should at some point see the results you're looking for.
Playing a hand, and then just copying the hand history, putting it into cards chat and sending it to your mate and go, what's up? You've got to think about it yourself. You've got to work through it logically, go through those steps, take a bit of extra time than you maybe would have in game. And then if at the end of that process you still can't really, you still are unsure, send it to a friend. Send it to, go to one of the online.
I think this hand is also something that is impossible to answer because we don't have any reads on our opponent and just can't tell what's the right answer is. I mean, with more data and more information, we could make up a way better plan. But yeah, with this limited information, I think it doesn't really matter what you do. I personally would call, but yeah, can be wrong, can be right. Very hard to tell, and it should not make that much of a difference.
Forums. There's plenty of resources out there with guys that are willing to help you out and give a bit of feedback on your game. All right, so this is like, my tips for how to review your own hand. Hope
Show
you guys
the fucking hand, guy.
enjoyed this today. Hope this was helpful and improves your own games. Until next time, cheers.
He will not show it. He will not show it. Will he? No. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, BluffTheSpot, for this video. Yeah. Hope you liked my commentary as well. Like, subscribe, share, all the good YouTube stuff. Yeah. Until next time. Bye-bye. Signing off. And, got one very important thing. If you make it so far, you might also be interested in my second channel, Finance with Axel, it's called. And I talk about investing, cryptocurrency, money, and all the good stuff there. So now I'm really signing out. Until next time, bye-bye.